And then just check to make sure it's broadcasting. It looks like it. It looks like it. Okay, we are broadcasting. All right, we'll get the guitar. Try. All right, everybody. So, this is a song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur about Narada Muni. It's called Narada Muni Bhajavina Radhika Ramana Namane. Ready? Narada Muni Bhajavina Radhika Ramana Namane Namamani Udita Hoya Makata Gita Same Amiyadara Varishagana Shavana Yugalagiya Makata Jana Sanananache Maria Panahiya Madhura Pura Asapapashi Mataya Jagata Jane Keha Vakande Keha Nanache Keha Mate Mane Mane Anchavadana Nadadea Remera Sangana Ruru Kamalasana Nachia Bole Bolo Bolo Hari Bolo Sahasrana Paramasuke Hari Bodi Boli Gaya Amaprabhave Matila Vishwa Namarasasave Paya Shri Krishna Namarasana Spure Puramaja Shri Rupa Pradya Chiya Vakati Vino Dasha Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paramacharya all Sutara Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace Abhaya Charananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananda Gauti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidway Gadadha Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopika Nath Shyama Kunda Radhakunda Gideon Vernan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Maturidam Ki Jai, Jagadasami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. So, Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Deja Tarni. So welcome everybody. So we're going to continue with our reading of the Caitanya Caritamrta. So Om Ganatamiranda Shagananjana Shlakaya Chakshur and Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigadave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. Okay, so reading from the first chapter of the Madhya Lila about Lord Chaitanya's travels, and we ended up, of course, yesterday we showed pictures of my travels in South India, following the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during his travels. And today we're going to continue where we left off in the reading of the Caitanya Caritamrta, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu finishes the 4 months in the rainy season, the Chaturmasya period, and he leaves Srirangam. Okay, so let's go to the Caitanya Caritamrta, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. All right, let's see if this works. All right. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. Hold on a second. Oh. Oh, it does work. Okay. Hold on a second. I'm trying. No, it doesn't. Anyway, let's just do the normal way. I was looking at a new method of changing. Okay. Text 111. Chaturma Shante Puna Dakshina Gamana Paramananda Puri Saha Dahani Milana. At the end of Chaturmasya, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued traveling throughout South India. At that time he met Paramananda Puri. Paramananda Puri, of course, was another godbrother of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master. And he was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. Tabi bata hari hote Krishna dasera udara Rama japi vipramuke Krishna nama prachara. After this, Krishnadas, the servant of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was delivered from the clutches of a Bhattahari. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then preached that Lord Krishna's name should also be chanted by Brahmins who were accustomed to chanting Lord Ram's name. So Prabhupada explains, in the Malabar district, a section of the Brahmanas are known as Nambudhari Brahmanas, and the Bhattaharis are their priests. The Bhattaharis know many tantric black arts, such as the art of killing a person, of bringing him under submission, and of destroying or devastating him. Thus, they are very expert in these black arts, and one such Bhattahari bewildered the personal servant of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, while the servant accompanied the Lord in his travels throughout South India. Somehow or other, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered this Krishnadas from the clutches of the Bhattahari. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is well known as Patita Pavana, the savior of all fallen souls, and he proved this in his behavior toward his personal servant, Krishnadas, whom he saved. Sometimes the word Bhattahari is misspelled in Bengal as Bhattamari. So a little bit more details about this story, that these Bhattataris, are actually like gypsies, and they lure people into their camp using attractive ladies. And the attractive ladies go up to the poor innocent soul and say, I'm in love with you. And the person who is the poor innocent or bewildered or lusty soul looks at them and goes, oh, this is nectar. And he follows that lady, and he gets trapped in their camp, and they put him under these mystic spells. The left-handed tantra. So what is left-handed tantra? Tantra basically means something that connects one. There's right-handed tantra, and we have our tantric literatures too, which are directions on how to perform a devotional service, like Narada Pancharatra. That's a tantric literature. But left-handed tantra is like things like illicit sex, intoxication, fish, and meeting and making obscene gestures, which are called the 5 M's. Panchamukara. Anyway, so in other words, these 5 M's like Matcha, Mada, Madan, Maitunya, etc., like that, and Mudra, they're actually those 5 principles of those who are tantric. And they actually are able to bewilder someone. And there were stories when I was in Mayapur, some devotees fell under the spell of the tantric. How did they spell? Why did they fall under the spell of the tantric? Well, they went to the market and they ate a sweet ball that had been haunted. And they bought a sweet ball, just milk products. But the sweet ball had a spell in it, and they ate it, and they fell under the spell of the tantrics. And later on, of course, they were saved. And in different parts of the world, there are tantrics or people engaged in what we call magika negra. That means black magic. And when we were in South America, we experienced that. Not personally, but I saw it. For example, once upon a time, there was a devotee on Sankirtan distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, and a tantric witch threw a lizard at him. It's not loud enough? Okay, I will make it louder, Your Divine Grace. All right, let's see. Hold on a second. Audio settings. Should be louder. Anyway. Should be loud enough, but we will make it louder. Actually, let's make it louder. Okay. Should be loud enough now. Okay, so what happened is that I didn't do anything. I wasn't a tantric. Oh, so maybe it was you. Ishwara Chaitanya said it was plenty loud for him. So anyway, so it'll adjust automatically. So what happened is this tantric lady threw a lizard at this poor brahmachari, and he followed her, and the other brahmacharis had to grab the poor brahmachari, drag him back to the temple, and chant Hare Krishna in his ear, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, and he came back to his senses. Another time, in a temple that I was in charge of, there was a lady who was a tantric, and she made a voodoo doll of a brahmachari. And guess what happened? And she used to hold that voodoo doll and kiss the voodoo doll. And the brahmachari followed her. Wow. Black magic. So one has to be very careful to chant nicely so that one cannot be influenced, or one should not be influenced by these forces of evil. Okay. All right, on that happy note. So anyway, so get back to the story. So Caitanya Mahaprabhu realized that his servant had been taken by trick by these Bhattaharis. And what he did is that he went to the camp of the Bhattaharis, because Lord Chaitanya always rescues his devotees, his Patita Pavana. And he said, "You have taken my servant." And these Bhattaharis rushed at Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, not with their mantras or magic, but they rushed with these swords as choppers. Something like people use as scythes in the field, or sugarcane knives and things like that, for those of you in Fiji. So they rushed. And Lord Chaitanya used his mystic power and made those same choppers, scythes, turn on the people who were trying to attack him. They cut those people to pieces. And Lord Chaitanya rescued his servant, grabbed him by the hair and rescued him. So Lord Chaitanya will always rescue us if we're sincere. So be careful, because Maya has many different attractive features. Many different features. And those features of Maya can sometimes be compared to worms on a hook. So if you know about fishing, someone fishes by putting a worm on a hook. And the worm looks really attractive to the fish. And the fish just goes to the worm and takes a big bite. And that's it. He's hooked. So don't get hooked by Krishna's illusory energy. Something looks good. It looks good. There's a lot of things that look good that aren't good for you. So anyway, that's what happened. So let's continue without more of a sannyas class here. Shri Rangapuri Sahatahani Milana Ramadasa Viprera Kaila Dukkha Vimochana. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then met Shri Rangapuri and mitigated all the sufferings of a Brahmin named Ramdas. That's another interesting story. Wow, I should tell that story. So this Ramdas was a very, very dear devotee of Lord Ramchandra. And he invited Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to take prasadam. But then when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to his house, Ramdas had not cooked, and Ramdas was lamenting about how Sita Devi had been taken away by Ravan. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu assured Ramdas that Sita Devi could never be taken away by Ravana. It was a Maya Sita, Vedavati, who was taken away by Ravana. So Ramdas then ate and he felt very good. And then later on, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got a copy of the Kurma Purana. And in the Kurma Purana, the whole story was told, exactly as I just said, how when Ravana supposedly kidnapped Sita Devi, he actually kidnapped Maya Sita. So Sita was never in the hands of Ravan. Had Sita ever been in the hands of Ravan, Ravan would have died immediately and saved Lord Ramchandra a lot of trouble. So that's Ramdas. He was suffering. Why was he suffering? Because he was feeling so morose that Sita Devi had been kidnapped by Ravan. And this is the love of a devotee. The love of a devotee is that the devotee feels such intense emotions upon hearing of the Lord's pastimes that he actually enters into those emotions. For example, if one is hearing about Indra trying to kill all the residents of Vrindavan, and how the residents in Vrindavan became very fearful and went to Krishna, one will actually exhibit and feel the same emotions as the residents of Vrindavan. And they will cry out to Krishna. This is a sign of devotion, that when you hear about these pastimes, you resonate. You resonate. That's called sympathetic resonance, where you resonate with the emotions of those devotees, and you just feel it, and you start crying and feeling ecstasy. So Ram Das was feeling like that in relationship with Sita Devi, supposedly being kidnapped by Ravan. So text 114, let's continue. Tattvavadi saha koila tatvira vichara apadake hina buddhi Ailatanzapara. Caitanya Mahaprabhu also had a discussion with the Tattvavadi community, and the Tattvavadis felt themselves to be inferior Vaishnavas. Prabhupada explains the Tattvavadi sect belongs to Madhvacharya's Vaishnava community, but its behavior differs from the strict Madhvacharya Vaishnava principles. There's one monastery named Uttaradhi, and one of its commanders was named Raghuvarya Tirtha Madhvacharya. So they presented things rather ritualistically, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defeated them. Ananta Purushottama Sri Janardana Padmanabha Vasudeva Kaila Darashana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then visited the Vishnu temples of Anantadeva Purushottama, Sri Janardana, Padmanabha, and Vasudeva. The temple of Ananta Padmanabha Vishnu is situated in the Trivandrum district, Tiruvananthapuram. This temple is very famous in those quarters. Another Vishnu temple named Sri Janardana is situated about 26 miles north of the Trivandrum district near the railway station called Varkala. Tabi Prabhu Koila Sapta Tala Vimochana Setubande Snana Rameshwara Darashana. After that, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered the celebrated Saptatala trees, took his bath at the Setubanda Rameshwara, and visited the temple of Lord Shiva known as Rameshwara. It is said that the Saptatala trees were very old and massive palm trees. There was once a fight between Bali and his brother Sugriva, and Lord Ramchandra took the side of Sugriva and killed Bali, keeping himself behind one of those celebrated trees. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu toured South India, he embraced the trees, which were delivered and directly promoted to Vaikuntha. So there's another story about these Saptatala trees, these seven, like tal. Tal tree is a type of palm tree. So there's a very interesting story. Let's see, it's part of the Ramayana. I guess I could tell it. Once upon a time, Bali and his Sugriva, basically, I'm not going to tell this story, but they didn't get along. Sugriva was exiled from his brother's kingdom. Bali was the king of the monkeys, and Sugriva was exiled. They were both like half-brothers, and maybe I'll reserve that story for the Ramayana Katha. Anyway, so they're half-brothers, and not only did Bali exile Sugriva and threaten to kill him, but Bali took Sugriva's wife. Phew. Very, very bad. And so Lord Ramchandra took the side of Sugriva. And before he actually killed Bali, Sugriva wanted him to prove that his arrow was strong enough to pierce the body of Sugriva, of Bali, which was like iron. Because Bali, get this, was the son of Indra, and Aruni. Tell the story later to leave you in a little suspense. So anyway, so his body was like iron, so how could Lord Ram's arrow pierce Bali's body, or the skin of Bali's body? So Sugriva said to Lord Ram, I want to see how good your arrows are. Can you pierce these trees? 7 trees. So what happened is Lord Ram, without even blinking an eye or exerting himself, pulled back his bow, shot an arrow, and the arrow went through all the 7 trees. And then entered the earth, went down to the netherworlds, and circulated around and came back and entered the quiver of Lord Ramachandra. Quiver is where you keep the arrows, on your back. That's what a bowman does. He keeps his arrows on his back. And so when Sugriva saw that, he thought, well, he can kill Bali. And later on, Lord Ramachandra did kill Bali, and he was actually hiding behind one of those trees. Now you may say, why was he hiding behind one of the trees? Because what was happening is that Sugriva and Bali were having a wrestling match. And Lord Ramachandra said, I will kill Bali during the wrestling match. Or it was more than a wrestling match. It was an all-out fight. And first, it happened twice, this wrestling match. The first time, Lord Ram couldn't tell the difference between Sugriva and Bali. But then, the second time, Sugriva was given a special garland, so it was understood that was Sugriva, and Lord Ram killed Bali. Bali accused him of killing him improperly, but Lord Ramachandra said, actually, you are a criminal. You took your brother's wife, you rascal. You deserve to be killed. And Lord Ram said, I'm acting on behalf of the king. And Lord Ram wasn't the king at that particular point, but his brother Bart was acting as the king, so he said, Lord Ram said, I am Bart's representative. So he killed Bali, and Sugriva took his side of Ram, and they eventually went to Lanka and brought back the Maya Sita and then the real Sita. Anyway, that's the story of the Ramayana, which we're going to be telling in the next few days. So, and when Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu came to South India, he embraced these trees. Let's see what else it mentions here. Hold on a second. Oh yeah, he took his bath in Setubandha. Setubandha is like a bridge. Rama Ishvara, that means Lord Ram is the controller or the Lord of Lord Shiva. Anyway, so Rama Ishvara, or Rama is the Ishvara. That's interesting. Rama Ishvara, Rameshvara. Anyway, so that's where the bridge to Lanka was built from. And from India to Lanka, Sri Lanka, Ceylon, whatever you want to call it right now. And of course, Hanuman didn't need a bridge because he had previously discovered Sita Devi in Lanka. But the rest of the soldiers and Lord Ram, they actually needed a bridge, and they constructed the bridge utilizing stones that floated. And why did the stones float? Because they wrote Lord Ram's name, Ram, on each stone. It's called Setubandha or Adam's Bridge, or anyway. And that bridge was discovered by satellite imagery. Millions of years later, the Americans sent up a satellite with eyes on it. I know it wasn't eyes, it was camera eyes. And they saw the bridge. And they said it's definitely not natural, or not a natural phenomenon. It is made by intelligent beings. So, next text. Dahani Karila Kurama Purana Shabana Maya Sita Nileka Ravana Tahate Ligana. At Rameshwara, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a chance to read the Kurma Purana, in which he discovered that the form of Sita, kidnapped by Ravan, was not of the real Sita, but a mere shadow representation. And we discussed that before. Prabhupada said in his purport, the Kurma Purana states that the shadowy Sita was placed into a fire as a test of chastity. It was Maya Sita who entered the fire, and the real Sita who came out of the fire. However, I guess I could tell this story. However, after Maya Sita had spent so much time thinking of Ram and chanting Ram's name, she wanted to marry Ram too. And she said, after Ram said, I'm very pleased that you took the part of the real Sita and endured that austerity for me, she said, please give me a benediction, let me marry you. And Ram said, Ekapatni Vrata. In this particular pastime, I'm only accepting one wife. Other pastimes, I can accept more wives, like when Krishna appeared. How many wives did Krishna have? 16,108, and each and every one had a palace and servants and sons. Like Prabhupada said, sometimes people may say that Krishna was very lusty. And Prabhupada said one way of answering that is to say that Krishna is unlimitedly lust. Because it's not lust like we know it. So anyway, a little more about this Maya Sita. So this Maya Sita, she actually wanted to marry Ram, and Ram said, well, we can make an arrangement, but it'll have to be in a future incarnation. So in a future incarnation, what happened? Very, very interesting. That the Lord came down to the earth planet looking for Lakshmi. And I told that story before, so I'm not going to get into all the details, because Lakshmi had left him because the Lord had been kicked in the chest, and the chest was the abode of Lakshmi, and he was looking all over, and finally finds this Maya Sita, who is called Padmavati, and he marries her by borrowing money, because he doesn't have any Lakshmi at that particular point. He borrows money from Kuvera, and he gets a property from Varaha Swami. Okay. And he marries Maya Sita. Very nice. And after he marries Maya Sita, when he's getting ready to go on his honeymoon, guess who shows up? Lakshmi. She gets upset. And the two women start to argue. And Krishna, at this point, who's known as Srinivas, he turns himself into a deity to get away from the two ladies. And the two ladies turn themselves into deities. And that's Venkateshwara and Shri and Bhu. Okay. To make a long story short. So, Shuniya Prabhura Anandita Haila Mana Ramadasa Viprera Kata Haila Smarana. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu was very glad to read about the false Sita, and he remembered his meeting with Ramadas Vipra, who was very sorry that Mother Sita had been kidnapped by Ravana. We told that story just earlier today. Se Puratana Patra Agraha Karinila Ramadase Dikaya Duka Kandaela. Indeed, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu eagerly tore this page from the Kurma Purana, although the book was very old, and he later showed it to Ramadas Vipra, whose unhappiness was mitigated. So it's not that he ruined the book, he had it copied. And also he found another book, several other books, and this is described here. Brahma Sangita Karnamrita Dvi Puntipana Dvi Pushtakalana Ela Uttama Janana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also found two other books, namely the Brahma Sangita and Krishna Karnamrta by Bilvamangal Thakur. Knowing these books to be excellent, he took them to present to his devotees. In the olden days, there were no presses, and all the important scriptures were handwritten and kept in large temples. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu found the Brahma Sangita and Krishna Karnamrta in handwritten text, and knowing them to be very authoritative, he took them with him to present to the devotees. Of course, he obtained the permission of the temple commander. Now both the Brahma Sangita and Krishna Karnamrta are available in print with commentaries by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Punarapi nilachale gamana karila bhaktagane meliya snana yatra tekila. After collecting these books, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned to Jagannath Puri. At that time, he saw the bathing ceremony of Jagannath was taking place, and he saw it. That's called the Snana Yatra. Let me describe that. So, Lord Chaitanya is bathed once a year, and during that bath, he supposedly gets what? Sick from the chill. Doesn't actually get sick, and I'll describe what actually happens. Anavasare Jagannatera na pannadarashana virahe ala nyatha karila gamana. When Jagannath was absent from the temple, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who could not see him, felt separation and left Jagannath Puri to go to a place known as Alalanatha. Alalanatha is also known as Brahmagiri. This place is about 14 miles from Jagannath Puri and is also on the beach. There is a temple of Jagannath there. At the present moment, a police station and post office are situated there because so many people come to see the temple. The word Anavasara is used when Sri Jagannath Ji cannot be seen in the temple. After the bathing ceremony, Snanayatra, Lord Jagannath apparently becomes sick. He is therefore removed to his private apartment where no one can see him. Actually, during this period, renovations are made on the body of the Jagannath deity. This is called Nava Yovana, new youth. During the Rath Yatra ceremony, Lord Jagannath once again comes before the public. Thus, for 15 days after the bathing ceremony, Jagannath is not visible to any visitors. All right, so let's talk about the esoteric meaning of Lord Jagannath's getting sick. Doesn't actually get sick because he has a spiritual body. So there's basically two reasons. One is to draw the mood of separation out of the devotees and to feel the feeling from the devotees that please let Lord Jagannath get better. Okay. And during that time, they're actually providing to him so many different medicines and so many things in the mood of separation, in the mood of caring for him, in the parental mood. So that's one point. But another point, even more important from Lord Jagannath's perspective, is that Lord Jagannath is Krishna. And he's Krishna in Dwarka. And sometimes Krishna just wants to be alone with his wife. So it's an excuse for him to have some QT. What is QT? Quality time with the goddess of fortune. But something else happens, which we'll describe in a second after we get to that point. Bhakta sanedina kata tahan rahila godera bhakta se samachara paila. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remained for some days at Alalanatha. In the meantime, he received news that all the devotees from Bengal were coming to Jagannath Puri. Nityananda Sarvabhauma Graha Karina Lila Mahaprabhu Ke Ina. When the devotees from Bengal arrived at Jagannath Puri, both Nityananda Prabhu and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya greatly endeavored to take Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu back to Jagannath Puri. Virahi vihula prahu najane ratridane ena kale aila godera bhakta kane. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu finally left Alalanatha to return to Jagannath Puri, he was overwhelmed both day and night due to the separation from Jagannatha. His lamentation knew no bounds. During this time, all the devotees from different parts of Bengal, and especially from Navadvipa, arrived in Jagannath Puri. Sabai mile yuktikari kirtanaharam bila Kirtana Vaishe Prabhu Ramana Stirahila. After due consideration, all the devotees began chanting the holy name congregationally. Lord Chaitanya's mind was thus pacified by the ecstasy of chanting. Being absolute in all circumstances, Lord Jagannath's person, form, picture, and kirtan are all identical. Therefore, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, he was pacified. Previously, he had been feeling very morose due to separation from Jagannath. The conclusion is that whenever a kirtan of pure devotees takes place, the Lord is immediately present. By chanting the holy names of the Lord, we associate with the Lord personally. Purveya be Prabhu Ramanande Re Milela Ilachale Asibare Tanre Dila. Previously, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was touring South India, he had met Ramananda Roy on the banks of the Godavari. We described that before. At that time, it had been decided that Ramananda Roy would resign from his post as governor and return to Jagannath Puri to live with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Raja Kignal Anateno Ailakattadinae Tridine Krishna Katha Ramananda Sane. Upon the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Ramananda Roy took leave of the king and returned to Jagannath Puri. After he arrived, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very much enjoyed talking with him both day and night about Krishna and his pastimes. And as we mentioned before, Ramananda Roy is an incarnation of Vishaka, also of Arjuna. Kashi Mishre Kripa Prajuna Mishradi Milana Paramananda Puri Govinda Kashishvara Gamana. After Ramananda Roy's arrival, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bestowed his mercy upon Kashi Mishra and met Prajuna Mishra and other devotees. At that time, three personalities, Paramananda Puri, Govinda, and Kashishvara, came to see the Lord at Jagannath Puri. Wow. So, Paramananda Puri is the godbrother of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master. Govinda and Kashishvara are god brothers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In other words, they're both initiated by Ishwara Puri, and they were taking care of Ishwara Puri when he was leaving this world. So they rendered very, very dear, intimate service to Ishwara Puri, the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Damadara Sarupa Milane Paramahananda Sikamahiti Milana Raya Bhavananda. Eventually there was a very nice meeting with Swarup Damodar Goswami, and the Lord became very pleased. Then there was a meeting with Siki Mahiti and with Bhavananda Roy, the father of Ramananda Roy. So Bhavananda Roy is sometimes considered to be an incarnation of Pandu, and his five sons are considered the five Pandavas. Gaurahaite Sarva Vaishnava Ragamata Kulina Grama Vasi Sange Pratama Milana. All the devotees from Bengal gradually began arriving at Jagannath Puri. At this time, the residents of Kulina Grama also came to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the first time. Narahari Dasari Atakandavasi Shivananda Sena Sangi Milila Sabhyasi. Eventually, Narahari Dasa and the other inhabitants of Kanda, along with Shivananda Sen, all arrived, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met them. Snana Yatra Deki Prabhu Sangi Bhaktagana Sabalana Kaila Prabhu Gundicha Marjana. After seeing the bathing ceremony of Lord Jagannath, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu washed and cleaned the Sri Gundicha temple with the assistance of many devotees. As mentioned before, the Gundicha temple represents Vrindavan, and the Jagannath Puri temple represents Dwarka. So the Rath Yatra is the dragging of Krishna by the residents of Vrindavan at Kurukshetra all the way back to Vrindavan. Sabha Sangi Ratha Yatra Kaila Darashana Ratha Grain Richakari Udyayana Gamana. After this, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the devotees saw the Ratha Yatra, the car festival ceremony. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself danced in front of the car, and after dancing, he entered a garden. So, a little bit about this Ratha Yatra and with the story I started telling, that Lord Jagannath is spending 14 days with his wife, the Goddess of Fortune, but the Goddess of Fortune is an expansion of the gopis in Vrindavan. And so Lord Jagannath is remembering the gopis in Vrindavan, and he tells his wife, I'm just going for a little walk. And he leaves to go to Vrindavan to be with his girlfriends. Prataparudre Kripa Kaila se stane Gorya Bhakte Agna Dila Vidayera Dene. In that garden, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bestowed his mercy upon King Prataparudra. When the Bengali devotees were about to return home, the Lord gave them separate orders to almost every one of them. So that garden was close to the Gundicha temple, where King Prataparudra dressed as an ordinary person, so Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could allow him to massage his feet and gave him special mercy. So that's Vrindavan. Anyway, so when the devotees are in Vrindavan, which is the Gundicha temple, for some time, then Lakshmi, the Goddess of Fortune, sends her associates to attack Lord Jagannath's associates so that he will go back. Anyway, we'll tell that story and its completeness when we tell the story of Ratha-yatra and we read that portion of the Caitanya Caritamrta. I think we should end here. There's a lot more detail. This is just an introduction. This is just a summary of the later pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The details are dealt with later on in the Madhya Lila and in the Ansha Lila. So we ended, hold on a second, let me write this down. So we went from 111 today to 135. Okay. And now we will stop sharing. Whoops, stop sharing. And we will allow some of you to ask questions. Okay. Who wants to ask questions? Speak now, forever hold your peace.
Hare Krishna, Gute. This is Rishikesh.
Oh, yeah, Rishikesh. So you have some questions?
Just curious to understand, is there any pastime related to Gundicha during Krishna's time? Gundicha
Isn't
temple?
what? I don't quite understand the question.
Is there any pastime related to Gundicha temple during Krishna's time? When Krishna was present here 5,000 years ago?
No, Gundicha is the name of a queen. So that the name itself doesn't really reflect Krishna's pastimes, but the Gundicha temple is actually represented in Vrindavan, and when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes there, he becomes very, very playful, like when Krishna is in Vrindavan. He's much more playful than when he is in Dwarka or Mathura. But the name Gundicha is not there in Krishna's pastimes because it's described that it was called the Gundicha temple after a particular queen. So, does that answer your question or no?
Yeah, I was trying to understand how this Gundicha temple came to know as Vrindavan.
Because Lord
Is there any
Jagannath,
history?
when did it actually start? Well, when did the Ratha-yatra's festival start? Obviously, after the meeting of Krishna with the gopis at Kurukshetra, not only the gopis, but the other residents of Vrindavan at Kurukshetra. So what is the history of it starting? I think this festival starting, I think we'd have to look into it.
Okay. I was just curious, Gurudev.
I mean, there's obviously some history of when they first started doing this festival in commemoration, and it was done way before the time of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I mean, the Jagannath temple was constructed eons ago, millions of years ago, by King Indradunya. And then, of course, there was later construction after that. What you're seeing now is not the original Jagannath temple, but it's in the original place. So exactly where this whole story of the Gundicha temple started and equating the Gundicha temple with Vrindavan, I think one would have to really look at the historical annals to figure that.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's been celebrated like that since way before the of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's not something new that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu invented. That was always been there. But as far as, when the festival actually started to be performed like that, that's an interesting question. That is a very interesting. It's an eternal festival, obviously, but when in the modern age it became extant or prominent again, that's an interesting question. Okay, who else has a question?
Thank you.
That's a very interesting question. We have to do a historical analysis. Oh, Pran Govinda, you have yourself unmuted. Everyone
Maharaj,
enjoys.
please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Prabhupada.
Everyone enjoys when you participate because you are very entertaining.
By your mercy.
By my mercy, I'm sure you were entertaining before my mercy. So what question do you have?
Maharaj, what I heard that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur did comment that the promise that Lord Jagannath gave blessing to Mother Gundicha was in absence of her husband, King Indradumna. So,
Yeah,
and she said she wanted a son. But then King Indradumna did not want any children, so nobody will claim that this
that's
is
right.
my temple. So, but that concept was there until Mahaprabhu came. Mahaprabhu, since Mahaprabhu, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, this Gundicha as a Vrindavan is began. There was no Gundicha as a Vrindavan pastime like that. It is
Really?
Mahaprabhu's new. Yes.
That's nice. That
It's
is
also
very nice.
in the book of Dhruva Maharaj Prabhu, he mentioned also, your godbrother Dhruva Maharaj, he wrote a book of
Right.
Ratha Jatra. Yeah, it's also there.
That's very interesting. Thank you for that information.
Maharaj, I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned about Kala Krishna Das Bhattathari. I was just curious that the Bhakti Shakti that gives the Bhakti Shakti that gives that potency, that cognizant potency and pleasure potency that's emanates. Just like if I am with you, I will get some Shakti from you, whether I am aware or not, but it will happen because you are loaded with it.
Yeah, you'll be
So,
in Maya if you're with me.
no, Maharaj. Thank you
You'll
for
go,
being exhibiting your humility. I like that, but
you'll go with me
we
to
all
Disney World and all right, so
Maharaj, you have
what's
bhakti. There is no
what's the
question. But
serious question? So what's the
so,
question?
how is that Mahaprabhu is the embodiment of that in the Radharani's mood with this Bhakti Shakti? How possible Kala Krishna Das is that close proximity can be diverted by illusory potency?
Because the living entity always has this free will. I mean, how is it that so many of Prabhupada's servants fell into Maya? There's one story of one of Prabhupada's servants. Hopefully this devotee is not watching right now. Let me just check. Oh, yes, he is. But anyway, I'll tell anyway. One of Prabhupada's intimate servants was with Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said they were at a particular temple where there were many ladies looking for husbands. It's a true story. Many ladies who had Cupid's bow and were ready to fire the 5 arrows of form, taste, smell, and touch, like that. So there were many. So Prabhupada said to this servant, do not go into the kitchen. It is the temple kitchen. It is very dangerous for you. So the devotee didn't take it very seriously. And he disobeyed Prabhupada's instruction. And guess what? He went in the kitchen. And then he went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, I want your blessings to be married. It's a true story. And his son is actually on this video conference right now. The son of this servant of Srila Prabhupada's is actually one of the people who are watching me give class, who happens to be my disciple. So it's a true story.
What do you mean happen to be? He's always your disciple.
Yeah, he is my disciple. That's right. No, happen to be mean it's just like it's a coincidence that the story is there. You know. So he's my disciple. He doesn't have to say anything. Please don't say anything. I won't mention his name because he's probably embarrassed by the whole thing. So anyway, and he looks a little bit like his father too. And then also you have the story of Lord Chaitanya's servant Balabhadra Bhattacharya. You know the story in Vrindavan? where he became bewildered, of course, not in Maya so much, but he wanted to see Krishna, who he thought was Krishna, but was actually a fisherman dancing, catching fish in the middle of the night in the Yamuna River. And Lord Chaitanya, what did he do? He slapped him to get him out of his Maya. So you can be with Krishna. I mean, what to speak of these demons who were with Krishna, and they were still demons. Kamsa, right?
Yeah.
Or you have demons like Hiranyakashipu who are with a pure devotee, Prahlad Maharaj. Or you have Prabhupada's wife who was married to a pure devotee. Prabhupada had Bhakti Shakti, and she was married to a pure devotee, yet she sold his Bhagavatams for tea biscuits.
Krishna.
So it's not, it's a question of accepting the Shakti. You can be in Shakti, like for example, it could be raining, but you can have an umbrella, so you won't get wet. It's all dependent on receptivity too. The mercy is there, but the mercy, just like it's described, that mercy in the spiritual master is like a shower that extinguishes the blazing fire of material existence. But it's not that everything accepts the shower of water. There's concrete too. So there's always free will. That's why we left the spiritual world, because we were with Krishna. We were originally Krishna conscious living entities. And we left.
But there is no Maya in spiritual world.
No. That's why we were kicked out.
So how the alluring...
We wanted Maya. There's no Maya, but you could want it. Just like, for example...
I misunderstood. I thought fundamental identity, generally, the functional identity is subordinate to fundamental identity. We're supposed to act now. And you are acting in that position. I respect that.
I hope I am.
You are, Maharaj. But isn't like automatically it becomes automatic at the completion of...
No. There's always free will. It's always done voluntarily. There's always free will. I mean, just like you could be in a place that's perfect. I mean, let's say you're in my house and I don't have any meat here, obviously. Hope not. Then you could be thinking, I have guests who come in and here meet with me, and they think, I have to leave because I have to eat my meat, or something like that. There's no meat, like there's no Maya in Krishna Loka, but you could still want it because you're aware of it. That's an interesting explanation. That you're aware of it, and those in the spiritual world have perfect knowledge, so they could want something even though they don't have it.
But then how do you explain that Prabhupada's explanation on, this one song, it's repeated in Alachua temple every day, same time after, anyway. It says that Nitya Gorangere Sangigane Nitya Siddha Karimane. And Prabhupada explained that Nitya Siddha means they never.
That's right.
They never.
That's right, because there's no time in the spiritual world. The Nitya Siddha devotees don't fall down. However, there's always the potential for someone who is of a different quality. I'm not a Nitya Siddha devotee. I'm not a Sadhana Siddha devotee. I am a Nitya Bhada.
You are Kripa Siddha, Maharaj.
No, I am creepy.
You are Kripa Siddha. You always say that Prabhupada's glorification so nicely. You always adore.
You know the word in English, creepy. I'm creepy, not creepa.
You are a wonderful sadhu.
No, I'm not wonderful. I am so wonderful. Ishwaraham aham bhogi siroham bala.
No. That's not for you. You just...
Yes, that's my mantra. I chant that every day, many times. So anyway, it's enough funny. But the living entity, Prabhupada said, has always free will. You can always choose. If you can't always choose, that means you don't have free will. So there's always the potential. And generally the potential is not exercised. But one can exercise that potential. Like look at that Krishnadas, Kala Krishnadas.
Yeah,
He
it
was
is very
he's
surprising.
an associate. He's an associate of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What happened? The Bhattaharis. He chose the beautiful girl from the Bhattaharis.
But Maharaj, when you say bhakti is superior to karma gyan, the
That's right.
Bhattacharya taking him karma, how do you prove it in his case?
It's superior because he didn't take shelter of bhakti. He
I see.
decided
Free will.
that's free will. If he took shelter of bhakti, then bhakti wouldn't have touched him. But he decided, he made a choice. I can give you choices. I mean, I can give anybody a choice. Just like you see many devotees are in the movement, and somehow or other, some devotees inherit a lot of money, like $1 million or $10 million, and many devotees left the movement when they got money.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Like Queen Kunti prays. Janmaishvarya Shrudasra Shivir Enamana Adapuma.
Madhya.
Yeah. So, I mean, just like, or this Ramrita Muni, he was meditating and Menaka came down.
Yeah.
And Shakuntala was born. Maya's very strong. We have to be really alert. Really alert.
As long
Maya
as I stay under your protection, I'll be okay. I feel.
Yeah, because you'll always be in Maya, then you'll be all right. Like if you can never fall down if you're on the bottom floor of a building. Think about it.
That's true, but Maharaj Prabhupada gave that, you know that story of how he said that the difference between you and me, you may fall, I won't fall.
That's right. So
and then they found him that he's praying very seriously for protection from Maya. And then the devotee says, how come you praying for that? He said, now you know why.
Because he's praying, yeah.
Yeah.
So we should always pray like that for protection from Maya. Anyway, Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krota Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Mudura Pashta Vegam. Okay, I think we have to end. Time for Maya. So...
Maharaj, in spiritual world, I wonder, what is your sarup? I'm very fascinated.
What is my sarup in the spiritual world? I'm part of the Brahma Jyoti.
No. It's impossible.
That's my sarup. I provide the light for the spiritual world. The tad basyate suryo na shanko nabhavakaha yadgatva nadivartante tadama paramamama. That verse describes me. The tad basyate suryo na shanko nabhavaka. So I'm like the light bulb. Brahma Jyoti. All right, enough funny stuff. Okay, all glories to His divine. Whoops.